5 legendary motorcycle brands just packed up and left the U.S. market. No press release, no warning, just gone. For decades, they built the bikes we dreamed about, the ones that defined the sound of the open road. Now their logos are fading from dealerships and their parts are getting harder to find. If you've ever rolled into a shop only to hear, "We don't service those anymore," this one hits home. Tonight, we'll break down why these legends vanished, and what their disappearance means for every real rider still holding the line. Number 5. Bimota. Some names rise from precision and pride, not mass appeal. This is one of them. Once whispered about in performance circles as the craftsman's dream, the brand now drifts on the edge of memory for American riders. The machines still exist, rare, hand-built, and beautiful, but the presence on United States roads has faded to a rumor. Every piece of the bike speaks to Hafsmrit, yet that Hafsmrit comes at the price of reach. The heart of the machine is brutal in its precision and unapologetic in its intent. Those numbers once read like a challenge, and they should. This machine was never built to blend in. It was built to redefine the idea of control. The hub-center steering isolates braking forces, keeping the frame stable even under heavy deceleration. The engine comes from a proven Japanese powerhouse, but the frame and geometry are pure Italian rebellion. You do not ride this bike, you harness it. It is the kind of machine that makes a man remember why the word mechanic once meant artist. Every weld, every panel, and every carbon edge feels sculpted, not stamped. It is a motorcycle built for people who see riding as a statement of craftsmanship, not convenience. Yet that pride carries a heavy burden. When distribution dries up and service becomes a guessing game, the promise of perfection turns into a logistical trial. Parts live on the other side of oceans. Software updates require specialized equipment. A cracked fairing or a failed sensor can park a 6-figure dream for an entire season. For the devoted few, that is part of the story. They will wait, pay, and polish, because owning such a machine is not about miles. It is about belonging to a myth. But for the rider who simply wants to fire up the engine on a Saturday morning and roll into the wind, this brand has become an echo rather than a companion. The departure from American showrooms was quiet, almost polite. No press release, no fine celebration. Dealers closed their doors, and the few remaining units became collector trophies. The market never failed because of quality or speed. It faded because its heartbeat could not synchronize with the practical rhythm of American riding. Here, a man expects to find his parts within a week and his service within a drive. The Bimota owner instead finds himself writing emails across time zones, waiting for translations and hoping the part arrives intact. It is an affair of patience more than passion now. Those who know can never let go. Among cruiser loyalists, the bike earns quiet respect, a reminder of when craftsmanship outpaced commerce. In a mass-made world, it stayed personal and paid the price. Its legend now lives in memory, kept alive by a few proud owners who gather like caretakers of art. For older riders, it symbolizes the gap between dream and road, a farewell both respectful and inevitable, admired from afar, built for beauty, not endurance, on America's long highways. Every man who ever tuned a carburetor or cleaned chrome knows the feeling of letting go of something beautiful that no longer fits his life. That is what this brand's exit represents. It is not a collapse. It is a retreat with dignity. The sound of that Italian twin fading down a back road remains one of motorcycling's purest notes, a sound that now belongs to memory. The brand bows out of America as quietly as it entered, leaving behind stories told at gas stations and garages of a machine too advanced, too rare, and too proud to compromise. And while the world moves toward technology and accessibility, some riders will always remember the day they saw that frame glint in the sun and realize that true beauty sometimes rides alone. The next brand on this list proves that history itself cannot always keep a legend alive. If you've ridden any of these bikes or watched their decline firsthand, drop a comment below. Hit like if you still believe real motorcycles deserve to survive. No or four. Norton. There was a time when the sound of this machine's twin engine echoed like a battle cry across the open road. The badge carried the weight of heritage, and its outline on a fuel tank meant one thing: legacy. Born from British grit, it rode through wars, victories, and generations of riders who measured pride not in chrome, but in endurance. That legacy still stirs emotion, but for many American riders, the brand has become a ghost of what it once was. It remains a name etched in history rather than a choice on the showroom floor. The Commando and Dominator still stand as symbols of craftsmanship, but their roar grows fainter each year across American highways. On paper, the machine tells a story of balance and refinement. In person, it feels deliberate, strong in its stance, confident in its minimalism, and proud in its refusal to chase trends. It was never meant for the crowd. It was built for the rider who believed in the purity of motion, for the man who found meaning in mechanical honesty. The frame feels carved rather than assembled, and the engine pulses with an old-world rhythm that no modern inline can mimic. It is a motorcycle that honors the days when torque mattered more than screens and every vibration connected you to the machine beneath. But beauty alone cannot anchor a brand across oceans. For American riders, ownership of this machine has turned from loyalty into devotion, a devotion that demands patience. The company's rebirth under new ownership brought hope, yet distribution remains narrow. Service networks are few, and parts supply comes in waves rather than streams. A man can have all the willpower in the world, but when his bike sits waiting for a gasket from across the Atlantic, even patience wears thin. The ride is still worth it, but it now requires faith as much as passion. The challenge lies not in performance, but in presence. The brand's image holds its allure, but dealerships in the United States have become scarce, leaving only the faithful to keep the name alive. For riders who grew up dreaming of the Union Jack stamped on a gas tank, the disappearance cuts deep. They remember the post-war days when the brand represented the best of both precision and pride. Now they see a company trying to rebuild its footing in a world that has moved on to electronics, connectivity, and mass production. The machine still exudes craftsmanship, but the network that supports it feels more like a whisper than a system. Riding one of these bikes today is a statement of defiance. It is for men who remember when motorcycles had soul and imperfection in equal measure. Every start, every gear shift feels personal. The clutch is heavy, the throttle direct, and the experience raw. In a world of traction control, ride modes, and automated shifting, this bike demands skill and rewards it. It gives nothing for free, and that is precisely why some riders love it. Yet for every enthusiast willing to fight for that connection, 10 others move toward brands that promise simplicity and certainty. The market rewards reliability, not romance, and that is where the British classic loses ground. Even with modern touches like updated braking systems, electronic injection, and tuned suspension, the brand's future in the United States remains uncertain. New investors and engineers have done their part, but it takes more than rebirth to regain territory. Without a strong dealer base or consistent marketing presence, even the best-built motorcycle risks being forgotten. The few that make it onto American roads now serve as moving tributes rather than mainstream machines. The brand survives through loyalty, not volume, and loyalty alone cannot fill a dealership floor. There's something magnetic about the name. It carries echoes of racing glory, the Isle of Man, and an era when motorcycles defined identity. That legacy is both armor and anchor, inspiring some and burdening others. For American riders, passion often meets distance. Those near rare service points find bliss, others only frustration. Without easy access or steady support, patience fades. Admiration alone cannot sustain a brand. In today's world, legacy must move, or even the proudest names risk standing still. When its emblem fades from more showrooms across America, it will not be forgotten. It will remain a legend told by men who once rode with the wind at their back and the hum of British precision beneath them. Some machines evolve, others endure through memory. This one endures because it dares to be exactly what it has always been, uncompromising, beautiful, and proudly out of step with its time. The next brand on this list carries a similar fire, but with a far more turbulent history written on American soil. Before we roll on, do a fast kit check. Reliable helmets, gloves, and small add-ons are linked below in the description. Grab what you need, then we're back on it. Number 3. Eric Buell Racing. Every American rider remembers the first time they heard this name. It carried the promise of homegrown innovation, raw speed, and rebellion against the ordinary. Born in small workshops and fueled by stubborn passion, it stood as proof that American engineering could take on the world of sport bikes. The company built motorcycles that handled like weapons and sounded like thunder trapped in steel. Each model carried the fire of independence, a challenge to convention. It was the kind of machine that proved performance could come with heart, and that a dream could take shape in metal. Those machines were more than fast. They were statements. They balanced massive torque with razor precision, their frames doubling as fuel tanks, and their swing arms housing oil to save weight. The brakes, mounted on the rim instead of the hub, defied tradition and delivered unmatched control. Every inch of them was designed by a man who believed motorcycles should be alive, responsive, wild, and built for those who ride with purpose. For a brief moment, it seemed the dream had become reality. An American superbike that could face Italy and Japan on their own turf. But passion alone could not outrun economics. The brand's story is written in flashes of brilliance and sudden silence. Factories rose, fell, and rose again under new banners, yet the fight always came down to funding. The machines were brilliant, but brilliance cannot replace marketing or infrastructure. When the parent company behind it closed its doors, dealerships vanished overnight. Riders who believed they had found the future suddenly found themselves without support, without warranty, and without parts. The bike that once symbolized defiance became a relic of what could have been. For those who own one today, the connection runs deep. Each startup feels like rebellion against the odds. They maintain their machines with online guides, small communities, and the last remaining specialists who still carry parts from the old warehouse. It is not an easy motorcycle to live with. It demands attention, respect, and patience. Yet the satisfaction of hearing that engine come alive again is something only true enthusiasts understand. When it runs, it reminds its rider why motorcycling is still a craft, not just a product. The engineering behind the machine was always ahead of its time. It placed weight where it mattered, cut excess wherever possible, and transferred power with surgical precision. Riders who have tasted its power often describe it as raw and unfiltered, the kind of sensation that modern electronics try to smooth out. That untamed nature became both its strength and its downfall. In an era moving toward comfort and control, this bike demanded courage. You had to wrestle with it, learn it, and trust it completely. That made it a masterpiece for the few and a mystery for the many. Across America, the story of this brand is told with a mix of pride and heartbreak. It was the underdog that refused to surrender. Founded by a racer who worked for Harley-Davidson before setting out on his own, the company represented what every rider believes deep down, that the open road should belong to those who dare. It carried the torch for American performance long before electric motors or imported technology tried to redefine the ride. Even in its fall, it left behind innovations that larger manufacturers later borrowed. Its DNA still echoes in modern frames and advanced braking systems. The fall wasn't sudden. It was a slow tightening of circumstance. Without strong funding, production faltered, ownership shifted, and pressure mounted. Yet loyal riders and engineers kept the dream alive until money finally ran out and the lights went dark. Today, spotting one feels like uncovering a secret. Few recognize the name, but true riders do. They remember a man's vision of an American sport bike that could rival the world, and that belief still hums quietly in garages and open roads. The legacy of this machine is not about sales or success. It is about conviction. It reminds riders that some machines are built for love, not profit. Its disappearance from showrooms was not a failure. It was a consequence of ambition unrestrained by compromise. A few still rolling down American highways serve as proof that passion leaves fingerprints long after the company is gone. The next brand on this list shows that even global prestige and artistic design can face the same quiet exit when loyalty outlasts practicality. Number 2. Hyosung. Every rider remembers the early 2000s when this name began showing up in local dealerships. It offered the dream of a full-size motorcycle at a price anyone could afford. For young riders and veterans looking for a reliable commuter, it felt like an honest deal. The design borrowed a few cues from bigger brands, the sound was deep enough to turn heads, and the maintenance costs stayed low. It looked like the kind of motorcycle that could make freedom accessible again. For a while it did. It filled a space that many thought would never exist, a middle ground between raw power and reasonable price. These machines offered enough punch for the highway and comfort for daily rides, all while keeping costs practical. For many first-time owners, this bike was the key that unlocked their riding life. It gave the feeling of something substantial without stretching finances thin. It was proof that not every motorcycle had to be a luxury purchase to earn its place on the road. But practicality rarely builds loyalty in a market that values soul. The machines lacked the character older American riders expect from their bikes. The sound was muted, the lines were modern but not memorable, and the badge carried no emotional weight. It was dependable, but dependability alone does not carve legends. Riders who once saw it as a bridge into motorcycling soon moved on to bigger brands once they could afford the price jump. The brand became a stepping stone rather than a destination. The real decline, however, came quietly through distribution. In the early years, dealers across the United States stocked small numbers, believing the value would attract new buyers. And for a while, it worked. But as emission standards changed and the company's partnerships shifted overseas, parts support began to dry up. Dealerships closed, one after another, leaving owners stranded with no supply chain. Waiting for a replacement clutch or fuel sensor turned into a test of endurance. Without consistent parts and service, even the most affordable motorcycle becomes a risk. That is where the story turned. The machines themselves never stopped being good motorcycles. They simply lost their presence. While Japan, Europe, and the United States evolved their lineups, this brand stayed mostly the same. The technology barely changed, the styling lagged behind, and innovation slowed to a crawl. Riders wanted evolution, but what they saw was repetition. Year after year, models returned with the same frame, the same look, and the same shortcomings. In an industry where design and performance move fast, standing still feels like falling behind. For American riders, the appeal eventually faded. Cruisers, sport tours, and adventure bikes from larger companies began offering far more for a similar price. Financing options made higher-end machines attainable, and dealership networks offered the one thing riders value most: support. With fewer showrooms carrying the badge, the brand's footprint began to shrink. The remaining bikes on used markets became orphan machines, well-built but undervalued, reliable but unwanted. Mechanics who once stocked parts moved on to brands with stronger demand. The story became one of survival, not growth. And yet there is a quiet respect among those who still ride one. Many of these owners are realists, men who do their own maintenance, who value a fair price and straightforward engineering. They know what they bought, and they make it last. These machines may not have the charisma of a Harley or the prestige of a Triumph, but they have grit. They start every morning, run without complaint, and carry their riders to work, rallies, and long weekends on the back roads. They are proof that a motorcycle does not have to be expensive to earn a place in someone's life. Even the most loyal riders can't fight an absent network. With dealerships gone and parts scarce, the brand fades from American roads, surviving only through small groups trading pieces online. For many, it was their first real taste of freedom, their first long ride, their first bond with the open road. Yet as support disappeared, trust followed. The machines never failed their riders. It was the system around them that did, leaving passion to keep the engines alive. Its quiet goodbye leaves a gap for another brand to rise, one that can blend affordability with identity. For now, the few remaining riders keep the flame alive, their machines running through sheer dedication and shared wisdom. The open road remembers them, even if the dealerships do not. The next brand on this list carried far more heritage, far more power, and far more heartbreak when its time finally ran out. If these stories hit close to home, don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe now. Join the riders who refuse to let America's motorcycle legacy fade into silence. Number 1. Victory. Some names fade quietly, but this one went out like a thunderclap across the American horizon. Victory stood for what many riders believed in: power made honest, design made bold, and heritage built right here at home. When it first appeared, it was more than a motorcycle brand. It was a declaration that American engineering could still rival anyone. The machines it produced carried strength in their frames and pride in every mile. For 2 decades, it stood as the alternative that refused to bow to tradition or compromise on performance. Those who threw a leg over one understood immediately why it mattered. Every twist of the throttle sent a message that American muscle could be modern, refined, and relentlessly powerful. The engine didn't just deliver torque, it delivered confidence. The design was distinctive, angular, and aggressive, standing apart from the sea of familiar silhouettes. You could spot one a mile away, carving down a highway or idling at a stoplight, carrying its rider with an unmistakable sense of authority. Victory built motorcycles that didn't chase nostalgia. They built machines for men who believed that the future of American riding should be bold, not borrowed. The rise of the brand was quick but not easy. It was born in the late 1990s when the American market was dominated by one giant. That alone took courage. Polaris, the company behind it, poured resources, engineering, and heart into making sure these bikes were not mere imitations. They introduced models that could hold their own against the heaviest cruisers on the market, delivering smoother handling, stronger brakes, and engines that felt unstoppable on long rides. Riders who took the leap found something rare, a fresh take on American V-twin power that didn't feel like a copy of anything else. For many, it was the best-kept secret in motorcycling, but the world rarely rewards the brave without compromise. As the years rolled on, competition tightened and costs climbed. Polaris, despite its ambition, found itself torn between 2 American legends: its growing off-road empire and its new dream of reviving another historic motorcycle name. In 2017, the announcement came down like a gut punch. Production would stop. Dealers would clear inventory. The brand that had given Harley-Davidson its most credible competition in decades was shutting its doors. There was no scandal, no collapse, just a decision made on paper that silenced the roar of something great. For the men who owned these bikes, it felt personal. They had not just bought motorcycles, they had invested in an idea. Victory owners stood apart at rallies, proud to ride something different yet fully American. The lines were clean, the power unrelenting, the reliability beyond question. Many believed the brand had finally achieved what so many others couldn't, blending American style with modern technology. But corporate priorities have a way of bearing even the strongest hearts. When Polaris shifted its focus to Indian motorcycles, the writing was on the wall. Victory's story ended not because it failed, but because its success was no longer convenient. The loss still stings across the community. For older riders, the name carried a sense of hope that American motorcycles could evolve without losing their soul. It bridged the gap between generations, offering modern performance without abandoning the thunder and grit that defined American iron. Its engines were powerful but civilized, its handling crisp but comfortable. It was the perfect machine for long-haul freedom and short bursts of adrenaline alike. When that line was cut, it felt like a betrayal to those who believed the road could always offer something new. Seeing one still thunder down the highway is like spotting an eagle in the wild, a living symbol of what American engineering once dared to be. Riders keep them immaculate, carrying the torch not from nostalgia but pride. Victory proved innovation and heritage could ride together, showing that refinement and raw muscle could share one road. Even in silence, it stands as proof that greatness isn't measured by time, but by the lasting impact it leaves on those who still believe. Victory's end marked more than the close of a company. It marked the close of an era when courage could create competition and craftsmanship could shape culture. Yet every rider who turns the key on one of those remaining machines knows the spirit is still alive. It rides through open highways, through endless sunsets, and through the hearts of those who believe that American steel should always stand for independence. The next chapter of motorcycling may move faster or shine brighter, but few will ever carry the kind of pride that victory once did. It remains, even in its absence, a triumph of will and a symbol of what it means to truly ride free. If you believe motorcycles should still be about grit, craftsmanship, and freedom, you're in the right garage. Hit subscribe to stand with riders who remember what made this world great, and drop a comment below. What brand do you miss the most and why? Let's keep the legends alive.